guys, so today we're going to talk about dating here in Korea and what's usual our year here.
So dating in Korea. I mean, you can go clubbing with random girls if you want. I mean, some people do that and have a great time, but I would just err on the side of caution because sometimes you might end up alone or you might end up in a random hotel. There have been stories of women, Korean and non-Korean, that have gotten super drunk, blackout drunk, got taken to motels, the men raped them, and then they actually left a door open and posted the details online for other and invited other men to come and have sex with them while they're drunk. So yeah, that was a thing when it came out. But you definitely have to be very, very careful about that kind of thing. Like what I mentioned isn't common. That was just a one. I think that was like it made the news, or I've heard it going around. So you definitely have to be careful about who you go out with and who you hook up with. In terms of STDs, I don't know about the state of sexual education anywhere in Southeast Asia. In the U.S., it's not great. It's very patchy at best. It's very much depending on the individual. So, for example, like education about pregnancy, generally, I think most Koreans are aware of it because some of them get educated pretty young, actually in kindergarten even. But in terms of STDs, that's not necessarily common knowledge. And most people here will not get tested for an STD until they actually have symptoms. And even so, in terms of men, I think there's a very strong belief that if you have an STD, that you're dirty or that it's wrong. And so I think a lot of dudes will try to avoid getting tested. And so you do have to be very, very careful dealing with STDs here. So with that said, I talked a little bit about hookup culture and, I guess going to clubs for actual dating. Like what the system they have here is that the guy will pay for most things and the woman will pay for something smaller or cheaper. For example, if you decide to do a dinner date and coffee, the guy will pay for dinner and then the woman will pay for coffee or something like that. That's been my experiences, and a lot of women I've known have done that. I think in some cases the guy will pay for everything, and there's been a handful of cases in which the guy goes Dutch. Personally, I'm not a fan of going Dutch. Like, even with my foreign friends, we don't do Dutch. We do it more closer to the Korean way, which one person pays and everyone just gives them money. I mean, if you feel like you need to pay Dutch, if you feel like there's nothing wrong with that and you're okay with that, that's your standard. I love it for you. That's not my thing. So I'm not a fan of going Dutch, but a lot of guys here will do the first system I talked about. They'll pay for one thing, you pay for another thing. So, if you get a guy that is willing to splurge on you, hey, take advantage of it. That's really nice, right? Do know that that's not common for Koreans, like Korean dating Koreans. I don't think they're less likely to sleep with each other on the first date, at least. Usually it happens a little later, usually when the relationship becomes quote unquote official or something like that. So if a guy is pressing you for sex on like the first or second date, you can be pretty confident that's all they really want from you. That said, I do know some relationships in which a one night stand or a hookup turned into like a marriage. But just know that if you're dating a Korean guy and he's pressuring you for sex, it's because all he wants from you is sex. That said, there's also a thing for some guys to go into a relationship and they wine and dine you and they love bomb you. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term love bombing, but that means they shower you with all this affection, and it is actually it's actually kind of a manipulation tactic using love bombing. So some guys will love bomb you, and they'll kind of coax you into having sex with them in this official relationship, and then they'll disappear.
Yeah, a lot. There's
Yeah.
a lot of Korean, I know.
Yeah. So they'll have this relationship with you 1, 2, maybe even 3 months. And then once they get sex from you or get enough sex from you, they get tired of you or they're ready to move on. They found someone new that they're more interested in. They move on. So don't think that just because you're boyfriend and girlfriend that you're safe from being ghosted. I remember one guy on Facebook mentioning something about he got dumped by a fiance, like ghosted by a fiance, and they were together for years. So you gotta, you really gotta be careful out here, you know. Yep, met the parents, met the friends, and had a proposal, and still got ghosted. So it's not official until you actually sign the marriage papers. Actually, there's a saying in the U.S. You're single until you're married.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah.
It's not mean you have boyfriend, you have girlfriend, you already thinking like that.
So you might think, oh well, how do I know if he's a good guy then if that happens so often? Well, that's the trouble, right? Like picking out the good guys from the guys that aren't so good. At the end of the day, because you're a foreigner, even if you're an East Asian foreigner, you're still a foreigner. You stand out, and you're going to attract unsavory people. You're going to attract the weirdos, the perverts, the guys that fetishize foreign women, the predators. You have to be very, very careful. And I hate to put it all on the woman, but I mean, we can only do what we can to protect ourselves, right? So don't worry about being too wary when you're dating guys. Like I said, some signs, if he's pushing you to drink, you know, if you're on like a first date and he's like encouraging you to drink or pushing you to drink, might be a red flag. If he is, like I said, pushing you to go to a motel, this might be a red flag. If he's insistent on taking you home, like going to your house and he's trying to come in, red flag. If he is insistent on going into an enclosed space, definitely red flag. And when I say enclosed space, I mean places like norebangs or multibangs, which is a room where you can like play computer games or video games, sing karaoke, you know, rooms for multiple purposes, or a DVD bang. Any place where you are alone with him with a room that has a door and no windows, I would say that's a red flag in itself, because there have been cases of women that have been raped in those rooms. And especially with norebangs and DVD bangs, because the rooms are naturally noisy, so you have to be very careful. It's not like people will hear you. Yeah, there's no CCTV, and people might not hear your shouting. They might mistaken it as part of the movie or song or whatever. So be super, super careful about meeting up with guys and going into places like that. I think if the guy relies on stereotypes, red flag. If a guy says, oh, Filipino people are like this, or American people are like that, nope, avoid that. That's a huge red flag. And I only say this because that means that they only see you in stereotypes. Like, they only know stereotypes. And they should have enough common sense to know that not everyone is going to be the exact same. I mean, it happens with Koreans even, so let alone other country people. I want to say something about physical affection, but I think this is more your mileage may vary. I know with my husband, he was not physically affectionate with me until the third date. And I think it's a little more common for Korean guys to wait a few dates before being like really physically affectionate. And when I mean physically affectionate, I mean things like kissing and hugging and stuff like that. Like I said, if you're into that and that's what you want, hey, you know, go at it, have fun. But I think they're usually pretty reserved in terms of like physical contact, at the very least with the first date. If a guy is talking a lot about getting married in the first date, it really depends on his age, because older Korean men are pressured to get married, so they are looking for someone to marry. Yeah. So some guys, especially once they hit 30, they feel the heat, and so they kind of like, I just gotta find someone to marry. So that might be an explanation. But if he's below the age of 30, talking about wanting to marry you and the first date, second date, might be an example of love bombing. Be very careful with that. Any guy that uses Korean culture as an excuse for bad behavior, dodge it. Like, dodge that like a bullet. Seriously. There are some guys that would use, oh, it's Korean culture, as an excuse for their bad behavior or their poor manners. My only recommendation for that is to make sure you have a very good and solid group of friends, of Korean friends specifically, that you can ask for references. And it also wouldn't hurt to also befriend foreigners especially that have been in the country long term. Now, we're foreigners, so we may not understand Korean culture 100%, but we'll usually have enough experiences that we can offer some advice or give you some understanding on certain types of behaviors. Oh, and this is something that's not just about dating in Korea, but dating in general. Trust your instincts. Trust your instincts. If you feel like something is wrong, something is probably wrong. You are probably picking up on something, some kind of body language or some bad feelings that might result in you getting hurt. Please follow your instincts. Don't doubt them. It's better to be safe than sorry, because the police here, like if something happens to you and you have to go to the police, I know among a lot of expats or just foreigners in Korea, there's kind of like the police have a reputation of siding with the Korean. Now, I'm not going to say they always do that. I've known times where they have actually helped the foreigner, and there have been times where they kind of just blow it off because they don't want to be bothered, or they're not interested, or they just feel like you're a foreigner, you deserve it, whatever. I guess the point is the police are not always the most consistent. If something happens, I do still encourage you to go to the police, but because it has happened before, the police has not really helped, or they refuse to help, or they drag their feet with the investigations for whatever reasons. It's not the same as studying in a foreign country. So give yourselves a chance, like at least 2 to 3 months. If you're only here for a short-term visit, like your exchange student, okay, I understand the rush, but at least give yourself like 1 or 2 months still, you know. Are there any questions you want to ask me about dating?
I forgot.
I think I've covered the most important things I wanted to talk about before, as well as the things I talked about previously. Please don't move in with a guy. Do not move in with a guy. Please. This is not even a Korean specific thing. This is just like a woman to woman giving advice. Do not move in with your boyfriend of 3 months. I'm so serious, especially if you're a student. If you are whether you're on a language visa or undergraduate visa, or even if you're just an exchange student, please don't try to move in with some guy that don't do it. Don't do it. I only recommend this because I've also heard some stories of girls that moved in with their boyfriends, especially students, and then the man starts taking advantage of them financially, or starts abusing them financially, and they have nowhere to go, literally, because they're in a foreign country, and they live with this guy. They don't have the money to move out and live on their own. Please don't do it. Do not live with the guy. At least wait a year before you live with them. That's just woman to woman advice.
Maybe that's it.
I think that's it for now.
Thank you so much.
No problem.